Welcome to Political Paradigm. I am Terry Ikumi. My guest is a presidential aspirant and the governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Fayemi. Your Excellency, welcome to Political Paradigm.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. Let me commence by saying it's interesting that we can catch you at a time like this when you're touring the country seeking election as president. But I'd like to say that it's best we start by addressing the elephant in the room, and that's the allegation of rigging by the former national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Adams Oshiomhole. I know that your aides or your office had reacted to that, but I'm sitting with you, and Nigerians would like to hear from the horse's mouth, especially because of your presidential ambition.
Well, okay. Thank you very much for going back to that. It's unfortunate that that has to form the basis of my conversation with you, but I think it's important to respond on the record. Since, as you say, my office has already responded to that, but I don't really think it's something that should be left lying low. But let me start by saying that Adams Oshiomhole and I go back a long way before we became politically exposed as active, partisan, elected officials of state. We were involved, he as labor union leader, I as a civil society activist in the pro-democracy campaign in the early 90s. And from then on, we also fortuitously became candidates of the same party in the 2007 election and spent time in courts trying valiantly and eventually successfully to retrieve our mandates in the different states. So he's not somebody I would say I don't know well, and I can't for the life of me even understand the basis of the allegation, because I didn't see your program, by the way, but I now saw the clip, and it would appear to me that that just came like a bolt out of the blues, because it wasn't really the focus of that particular conversation. And I've been racking my brain to try and understand the basis of it. First and foremost, a lot of misconceptions have been associated with that claim. The first misconception was that this had to do with 2018 elections in my state. Frankly, I can't see the connection. Governor Adams Oshiomhole was not the chairman of the party when I went into the primaries in Ekiti State.
Oh, just a second. Frankly speaking, this had nothing to do with the election in your state. He did say that this happened in his office. You were Governors Forum chairman. So he said you were speaking on behalf of the governors.
I was speaking on behalf of the governors.
According to him.
Well, the one recollection I had, and I had several meetings over the happenings in Edo State, for example, with Governor Adams Oshiomhole, but I wasn't even at that time the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum. I'd already left that office. I was in that office way back when Adams himself was a governor. I handed over to Governor Rochas Okorocha, and at the time he was referring to, the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum is still the current chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, Governor Atiku Bagudu. However, I at various times joined delegations of governors to speak to him in his capacity as chairman over what was going on in Edo State. And I recall that the one issue that we discussed in relation to that was the process of disqualification of Governor Obaseki, because I felt he should still have been allowed to go into the race. And whatever then transpires in that primaries would be seen as the outcome of the party in the state, rather than a premature disqualification over what then turned out to be an incorrect view by the position of the courts later in that state. So there couldn't have been a basis, even if it was the position of governors, naturally, to defend a fellow governor. The basis of it would not have been, oh, Chairman, what we mean is, even if you go through the process, at the end of the day, it's who we want that should be taken on by you. I went through a primary in my state with 33 other candidates, aspirants for the governorship race in Ekiti. It was disrupted the first time, if you recall what happened in 2018, and another one held barely a week after, before I emerged as the candidate of the party. So I have never in my life been afraid of due process, and I don't promote in any way, shape, or form brigandage, sleight of hand, rigging, even when it happened to me in Ekiti State in the 2014 election, which most Nigerians could recall what happened. And there were revelations afterwards by military officers involved in that. I walked away from it. So, frankly, I don't think there's any basis to that claim by my brother, the former governor and former chairman of our party. But Adams is my political associate. Adams is my friend.
But are you truly friends? Are you truly brothers? I say this because in having this conversation with me, some of the conversation did not make the cuts. In having this conversation with me, he sort of gave credence to it by saying that there were witnesses. He pointed at Professor Julius Ihobere, saying he was there, and according to him, said that that's not something you're known for, that why would you push for something like that? Now, my concern is, why do you think that such an allegation would be made against you just out of the blue? Or do you think it has anything to do with your presidential ambition?
I can't speculate on why. You're going to have to ask him that question. Why he did it, not for me to speculate on his reasons. All I can tell you is that it was unfounded. There was no basis to it. I had no reason to ask for any favors from him.
If you consider it to be false, defamatory, libelous, are you considering legal action?
Well, what I'm considering or not considering is something that would remain in my own frame of mind. I could also be considering, is a party leader, is a respected former chairman of the party, and as I said to you, is somebody that I go back a long way with. So I would relish an opportunity to sit with him, first and foremost, to try and decipher the basis of this. And then I will take my decision on the basis of that.
You know, for someone who's written on governance, democracy, and constitutionalism, I'm wondering, do you fear that this could have a damaging effect on your reputation? Because I'm sure even you have, like you mentioned, there are perceptions out there that you're not comfortable with regarding what he said.
And I've already responded to that. And I've officially responded to that through my spokesperson. I'm also repeating it on the program where he made his allegation. There would always be perceptions, and it's a duty of any serious-minded political leader to manage perceptions in a manner that is not detrimental to one's image. But at the end of the day, facts are sacred. In politics, opinions are 1,000 apiece. And you would always have various perceptions, especially in the social media age. But that would also be weighed against the balance of facts and antecedents. I would like to think most Nigerians know my antecedents as, one, a democracy activist, somebody who has run one of the most celebrated institutions in the third sector, and which still runs 15, 16 years after I stopped being its founding director, and remains one of the most sought after in that sector, both in Nigeria and on the continent, the Center for Democracy and Development, and has been known to be actively a promoter of good governance and democratization. So really, my record is out there.
You know, there's a clear distinction between being an activist and a politician.
No.
So clearly,
that is the false dichotomy people try to draw. The values that took me into activism are the same values that I am still promoting as a politician. There is no dichotomy. Those principles of commitment to values of integrity, of compassion to our people, of determination to make a fundamental difference in the lives of ordinary citizens are still the values that I am pursuing as a political leader. There's no distinction.
Very well then. So let me ask you this question. Were you among the governors who wanted him out of office?
Who wanted?
Governor Shomole out of office.
Governor Shomole's removal from office had very little to do with us. Don't forget the context. His word, first and foremost, played a critical role in accordance with the constitution of the party. And then the courts validated that. Yes, there were governors, and probably even all governors, felt that the chairman of the party was acting in a lot of ways beyond the powers of his office. And they found him to be dictatorial, they found him to be autocratic, they found him to be a person who was not interested in building a collaborative relation, and they were his former colleagues. Don't let's forget that. So for anyone to be isolated and say, oh, he's responsible, ultimately, it was a decision of the party. It wasn't the decision of an individual, because the National Executive Committee of the party took that decision ultimately.
You know, I don't want us to dwell so much on him. He's not the subject.
I really wouldn't want to do that.
Conversation. So
it's not personal, whatever relationship.
I think it is to him. I think it is to him. I say this because he says that he's been quiet for 2 years, and he believes this is his opportunity to speak his truth. He is ready to speak his truth. So he insists that there were a few governors. He mentioned 3 governors, and he went on to say that these governors and some other persons paid the people at his ward level 10 million naira each to remove him. I don't know if you want to respond to that, but...
Frankly, I'm not going to respond to that.
Great. Let's talk about your presidential ambition now. Now, there are some voices that say that you're not in it for the long run. In fact, some sources say that you are building a structure that you will eventually collapse for someone else. How far are you willing to go with this?
Well, I'm sure those who tell you that, they don't know who Fayemi is. I don't do things accidentally. This is a decision I came to after a very long drawn process that involved my family, that involved my political associates, that also involved leaders that I respect in the party and even outside my party. And at the end of the day, I came to this decision after a long period of introspection. And if anyone believes that Fayemi is entertaining himself or is not in this for the long run, just to quote you, we shall see.
What method of primaries would you be open to?
I'm a product of process. and I go by process. As far as I am aware, in this party to which I belong, there is a very clear constitutional provision in the party constitution in relation to mode of primaries. And there are three: direct, indirect, and also consensus. It is not for me, because I'm not a party official, to decide the mode, and to the best of my knowledge, that decision has not been taken, even now that you're speaking to me. Whichever mode the party, in its wisdom, after consulting with critical stakeholders, decides to go with, it's okay by me.
Very well. So at what point, Your Excellency, did you decide that you wanted to be president? Has it been a lifelong ambition for you as well? Or at what point did you decide that you wanted to run for president, and why?
Okay, let's go back a little bit into history. I grew up in a nuclear family in which social justice has always been a very strong commitment. As a young mass server in the Catholic Church, if you know the Catholic Church, if you know the organization, you will know that it is an organization that is committed to improving the condition of humanity. And social justice is central to that. From there, I went to school, went to university as an activist. I grew up as a student union activist, moved into pro-democracy activist, worked very actively in the pro-democracy movement, particularly around the period of the annulment of the June 12th election in relation to Nigeria. But in Africa, also around the anti-apartheid movement, I was active. And following on from that, thankfully, democracy returned in '99. And I returned to Nigeria in 2000, having lived abroad for roughly about 15 years before then. And in all of this period, I have been actively involved in a range of issues relating to good governance, relating to security sector reform, relating to post-conflict reconstruction in several other countries, in Africa, outside Africa. So when I returned, it was primarily to run an institution that acts as a bridge between ideas and action. And in that role, I assisted the administration that has just come in a non-partisan way, in a number of initiatives around truth-telling. The Oputa Commission, that was one of the first things that I did actively. Working with the commission, Justice Oputa, Bishop Matthew Kuka, and all of its members to help put together the process, raise funds for it, bring in experts from other truth-telling initiatives around the world in order for that commission to accomplish the task given to it by government. I was also involved in constitutional reform initiatives with the late Attorney General Chief Bola Ige, and then my office served as the secretariat of the Citizens Forum for Constitutional Reform in the country. Of course, as you may be aware, I was involved in security sector reform as well and served on various presidential committees working on those issues before I was invited by political leaders in my state to run for office. And I did in 2007. So service has always been in my DNA. So it wouldn't surprise you that I have moved from being governor first time to being Minister of the Federal Republic, and then returning as governor and becoming the chair of the Governors Forum. That trajectory is clear, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you've served in all of those positions, you would automatically see yourself as serving in in the presidential office. But as I said, this has taken a lot of introspection. I have been involved also with this presidency, not just as a minister. I was very active in the process that brought about President Muhammadu Buhari. You may recall that I chaired the presidential primaries in Lagos in December 2014 and worked closely with the transition committee itself that brought President Buhari to office. So there were things that I was involved in, that I'm still involved in bringing our government to office. So, and I believe that the people who are best placed to take on the task of deepening our democratization process and also strengthening the legacy and the gains of the government in the last 7 years and addressing the gaps are people who have not just the institutional memory, but practical insight into progress and challenges. And I believe I qualify on a number of those grounds.
Do you think that stands you out from among the candidates or aspirants?
Well, it's for the delegates, however we decide to do this, whether it's direct election or indirect election. It's for those who will vote in that election to determine what stands being held. But it's going to be a contest of competing visions. All of us would have to lay out what our own vision of transformation is, and hopefully the people who would take that decision will be able to separate the wheat from the chaff and come out with a decision.
But what kind of feelers are you getting? I know you've been meeting delegates, and you know, some persons are quite confident. There are some who meet these delegates and they get the outright commitment. Do you feel, does meeting these delegates give you any confidence?
Well, I've been long enough in politics to know that a day is a long time in politics. So I don't come into this with any sense of entitlement that this is mine to take. As a matter of fact, I come into it with a lot of humility. I see it as a burden of service. And when I go to meet delegates, this is what I say to them. Besides that, look, I don't necessarily think it is automatic for you to choose Kayode Fayemi. However, this is me. This is the role I've played in this party. This is the experience I've garnered over the years in government. This is my professional antecedents. And on the basis of all this and what I offer, I hope you will come to this conclusion that I am the best person for this job. So it's entirely up to
and not money bags, right?
Well, I just cited history. I'm a student of history.
No, I know. You had recently said that money bags should not be voted.
I didn't say that.
You were quoted to have said that.
I didn't say that. You're misquoting me.
Okay, what did you say?
I said money bags have not been voted into the presidency since Nigeria's independence. And I provided evidence of what I was saying, that all the people who have won elections in this country, right from Abubakar Tafawa Balewa to a school teacher, to President Shehu Shagari, another school teacher, experienced, committed public servant, to General Olusegun Obasanjo, to late President Umaru Yar'Adua, another lecturer. And then, of course, to the man without shoes, former President Goodluck Jonathan, not to mention my own leader and current president. There is no way you can associate all those people I've mentioned
with money bags.
With money bags.
So what was your point? Why was it important to bring that up?
It was important because I was speaking to delegates about my own circumstance, that look, this is not what I bring to the table. I don't have a lot of money to offer people. What I have are ideas, my passion, my commitment, my sincerity of purpose, my integrity. Those are the values I bring to the table. So if you're expecting me to come into this with a lot of money, then I'm probably the wrong choice. And I was also drawing a parallel. That primaries that I chaired in December 2014, one of the most significant statements that came out of it was aspirant Muhammadu Buhari telling delegates at the Teslim Balogun Stadium that I do not have dollars to give. Even if I do, I will not give you. What I have is my integrity, and I will serve you and serve the country with all the fibers in my bone.
You have served under the Buhari administration.
For 3 years.
For 3 years, of course. And you said that you had done some work with the administration, even though you were not appointed minister at the time. How aware are you, considering that you want to be president now, of the challenges that you're likely to inherit? What challenges do you see yourself inheriting from this administration, and how do you hope to address them if you become president?
Well, thank you. Government is always a continuum. You have to start by inheriting assets and liabilities of the departing authority, and you have to then put in place a framework that would enable you to address those issues. I am very familiar with this government, not just because I served as a minister. I was also the director of policy, research, and strategy for the Buhari presidential campaign in 2015. So in terms of drawing up manifestos and policy papers for the party, that was my responsibility. When the transition committee also finished its work in 2015, before the government actually was sworn in, it was my onerous responsibility to synthesize the report and summarize it for Mr. President. So I knew what we promised at the time. I am aware of what we have been able to deliver. And I'm also conscious of the gaps that exist. So when I say that I have done some work with the government, and I've also served as a cabinet minister, and as chairman of the Governors Forum, you could say I'm the representative of the subnationals in every engagement with the federal government. Security is a major issue on the agenda of the Nigerian Governors Forum on a monthly basis. This is a matter that I engage officials of the central government on behalf of my colleagues. And I know the enormity of the task. I know the successes, some of which cannot even be conveyed to Nigerians. I know the dangers that have been avoided that could have been much more deleterious than even the challenges that we currently have. And I know that this is an area that anybody that wants to serve as president must make a #1 priority, because in the realm of perception as well as reality, that is the most burdensome issue for now. And I've gone around this country, I've visited delegates in about 20 states now, and this is a recurring decimal in every state that I've been to. How do we improve on the security situation in the country? So that's one. The second, of course, is availability of economic opportunities and empowerment for the people, particularly investments in youth. Third, thankfully, the Buhari administration has done quite a bit on the third sector, which is infrastructure development. But there are still areas of the infrastructure development that we haven't quite met the expectations of Nigerians on. The power sector, for example. Nigerians are, quite frankly, displeased with the fact that this government, just as previous governments before it, have not been able to provide regular power supply that would then become the engine of growth and industrial development. And we clearly have to do something about that, not just increase the generation capacity. And again, this government has been doing some work on that, but also improve on the distribution. And one of the things I've said, if you listen to my declaration speech, is that we need to do something about decentralizing the grid and also creating more micro and mini grids that are based on renewable energy, solar, thermal, you name it. So for me, those are three areas I've clearly mentioned to you that I consider to be topmost priority for anyone who wants to govern. But in dealing with all those three areas, there is an interconnecting thread, which is rebuilding national cohesion. A lot of Nigerians are losing faith in the Nigerian project. And those of us who believe that Nigeria is worth fighting for and worth living for, we must give Nigerians the basis of believing again that, yes, this is a dream worth working on, not a dream to be defied.
How are you going to, how do you propose we do that? Or how will you do that?
Well, again, in my declaration speech, Terry, you would have heard me talk about the need for decentralization and devolution. I made it very clear that in a range of areas in our country, this is something that we must work on. First, it's in our manifesto in 2015. We repeated it in 2019. And for me, devolution is an administrative mechanism for greater efficiency. Take the Nigerian police that we all complain about. There's no magic the Nigerian police will do until we have multi-level policing. Because first, we don't have enough people in our police force. Countries of lesser population have more men and women in the police force. I always give the example of Egypt and Ethiopia, right here on the African continent, where you have more than 1 million people, officials in the police force. Here, we oscillate, depending on who is giving you the figure, between 350,000 and 450,000, of which at least 100,000 are involved in VIP duties. So little wonder then that the military that is supposed to be exclusively focused on maintaining the territorial integrity of our country ends up taking more responsibility in aid to civil authority in internal security matters. And that's why you have soldiers involved in internal security in all the 36 states in this country today. So that's one issue that you need to do something about. We need to devolve internal security to the lower level. But in doing that, you must also hold the lower levels accountable for the efficiency and malfeasance of that devolved authority.
Very well.
That's just one.
Okay. I think that food security is something that you're particular about.
Yes.
I recall that you had an interaction with the Edo State governor where you talked about food security. So what would you be doing about food security if you become president?
Well, I'm glad you referred to that. We were talking about it because this is a great concern in the Nigerian Governors Forum. Following what's happening with the Ukrainian war and what's happening post-COVID, livelihoods are being affected. And food inflation is worrisome, even in Nigeria. You go to the market today, what you buy a gallon of palm oil for is not what you will get it for tomorrow in the same market. It's probably 10, 15% higher in its price. And my take on this is, one, we need to find a way to accelerate support to our farmers. This is planting season. The rains are here. But in a lot of cases, The farmers don't have the inputs, they don't have the support, they don't have the security, particularly in the food belt. Look at Kaduna State, where we have Ansaru, Boko Haram, ISWAP, whatever you want to call them. But if you go by the assessment of the governor and the Security Council of the state, the forest is now being invaded. So we need to really take on food security as a basis of human security and tackle that. But much more importantly, the bulk of our population is now urbanized. 60% of our population is urbanized. That reduces farming, agricultural activity. Less than 6% of our arable farmland is cultivated. So we need an emergency program that would incentivize farmers, not just through security protection, but also incentivize younger people to become more involved in agriculture, and also ensure that there is guaranteed offtake of whatever is produced. In addition to developing the full value chain, right from planting to agro-processing, we have the land. It is fertile land in most cases, but we haven't managed to do what we should to bring more people to the farm. And we cannot do that if we do not address the challenges of climate change and then the challenges of security on the land.
In your first 100 days as president, should you become president, what would you prioritize? And what should Nigeria hold you accountable to?
Well, in the first 100 days, I'm not going to tell you that I would resolve all security problems. It's going to take time. But there will be no doubt in the minds of Nigerians as to my laser beam focus on securing the population of this country. That would be number one priority for me. I'm not going to go into all the details of how that's going to be done, but you can take it to the bank that that is going to be the number one issue. But it's not going to be done in isolation of sustainable peace and development. Because yes, we need to stop the oxygen of support to the insurgents, to the criminals, to the bandits and terrorists, and address that problem in the short term. But short-term response, it only gives us the respite to take a much more comprehensive response to that, which has to be a focus on addressing the triggers of insecurity, poverty, inequality, the youth bulge that provides the canon for all of these elements that want to take advantage of our society.
Your Excellency, I'd like to ask you this question. You appear quite healthy and physically fit. Do you agree that physical fitness is as equally important as mental fitness for anyone who wants to be president of this country? I ask this because a presidential aspirant believes that he doesn't need to be physically fit.
I don't believe you have any presidential aspirant who will tell you that he doesn't believe to be physically fit.
Well, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu says that many people complain about his health, but what he has is his brain, and he doesn't need to come and do any physical activities as president. He has maintained that stance.
No, the fact that he said he doesn't need to do any physical activity to impress you is that he doesn't need to run around in order to prove to you that he's physically healthy, which is true. You wouldn't know who is physically healthy. You're not his doctor. It's only his physician that can give us a record and say, oh, Asiwaju is healthy, Asiwaju is not healthy. I know Asiwaju very well, but I can't tell you anything about his health status. But the bit of him that I know is mentally alert. He's also, to the best of my knowledge, physically alert.
My question to you was, if you feel that there should be a balance between them, both necessary.
In fact, in most mature democracies, it's a condition. You have to demonstrate both physical and mental fitness for you to even be qualified to run for office. So I don't think it's a no-brainer, really.
There's been some back and forth as to whether you are running for just the presidency or if you would still, like Comrade Adams Oshomole, buy a senatorial form, or if you did buy a senatorial form. So clear this out for us.
You already asked that question.
No, I didn't ask that question.
You're asking it in a different way now.
Well, that's what you say, but I'm asking you this because I think your office there was something from, maybe not your office, but there was something countering reports that said that you bought a senatorial form.
Because I didn't. So it's a simple response. There is a lot of political demarketing that is going on in the political space. When certain aspirants believe that these are the potential aspirants that will give me problems, one of the ways to deal with that, in their view, is to demarket such aspirants. And I wouldn't be surprised if the newspaper that wrote that was just out for mischief. The record should be obvious. It should be clear to people, and journalists should do their work. It shouldn't be difficult for you, Terry, to find out from the All Progressives Congress Secretariat the number of people who collected presidential nomination forms and the number of people who collected senatorial nomination forms in my state, for example. It shouldn't be that difficult. And I'm sure this information is available. And I challenge anyone who is claiming that County Fayemi took a nomination form for senatorial race to produce evidence of that. Because I didn't. These things should be easy to clear.
All right, let's talk about your time in office now. You're just about 5 months to the end of your tenure.
Yes, I am.
You have an interesting political history with regard to your governorship, your time in office as governor, 4 years on, 4 years off, 4 years back again.
Right.
Now that your tenure is almost rounding off, do you think that the people of Ekiti State can look back and say they are proud to have given you a chance a second time?
Well, I believe that that's the message you're going to get from them, but don't ask me that. I think what you should do is ask Ekiti people that. But I think clearly, without any shadow of a doubt, that I have improved the lives of Ekiti people.
So what sort of changes did you bring to Ekiti State for this your second term?
Well, when I came into office second term, for example, Ekiti people had realized the problems of not having me in office in the last 4 years. And I spent a great deal of my time restoring those elements of services rendered to Ekiti that were missing in the period I wasn't in office. Free, compulsory, qualitative education for the people of Ekiti State right up to year 12, senior secondary school 3. Free medical services for the most vulnerable segments of the population. Social Security benefit scheme that I introduced in my first term that was continued when I returned to office. Infrastructure development in the state, which has been significantly absent. And that's why you would notice that within a short space of time, Ekiti climbed up to the second highest state with school enrollment in the country. And also, in that period, had a significant improvement in the WAEC results. The last one being 70% of those who took WASC examination, West African School Certificate examination, scoring 5 credits, including English and mathematics. For me, that's human capital development. And that is the most significant contribution that I consider that any government should give to the people. Of course, there are other things that I've managed to do in that space of time. In the agricultural sector, you may not be aware of it, but you should try and find out, Terry, the significant step we've taken in ranching and in dairy production. Today, when you're drinking your cowbell milk, you're probably drinking milk from Ikun Dairy Farm in Ekiti, where we now produce between 4,000 to 5,000 liters in our partnership with Promacedo, the milk company in Nigeria. Ditto, and this is a model that we have strengthened, public-private partnership, because we do not believe that we have the capacity to run many of these moribund companies that we used to have in the state of state-owned enterprise, in the time of state-owned enterprises. That would have been attractive, but not anymore. So we have divested from many of these moribund state-owned enterprises, resuscitated them, and then gave them to people who are better positioned and much more experienced to run such institutions. And the state is the better for it. And quality of life, I believe, has improved in spite of the challenges. I mean, don't forget, in my 4 years that you're talking about, this second term, almost half of it has been taken by COVID. But I haven't let that deter me. I have still managed to focus on the objective of improved governance and creating a state for people to live, to work, and play.
I wonder how you've been able to focus on your state as much, because I know the responsibilities as NGF chairman, and now you're running for office. And when I looked you up, I tried to find some feedback from the people of Ekiti State, and I think there were concerns that, to an extent, you spend quite some time in Abuja.
I do.
Some feel that you spend more time in Abuja than you do in your state.
I know some feel that.
Does that bother you? Is it true?
Certainly, I spend more time this second time in office than I did during my first time in office. But, that really shouldn't bother anyone beyond perception level bother. It is whether it's telling on my performance as a governor that should be worrying. And I would like to think that that has not really affected my performance, because I have capable hands in position. I have a deputy governor who is excellent and experienced. I have a team that is very professional, extremely qualified. I have probably, in the annals of the history of the state, and even comparatively around the country, I have some of the best minds running my government. So I don't have to be there 24/7. Any government that I have to run by sitting as governor 24/7 means I'm a failed governor.
June 18 is just around the corner, and I like to believe that you are quite confident that the people of Ekiti are with the APC based on your antecedents as governor and the development that you say, or the changes that you say you've brought to the state. Are you confident that the people of Ekiti are with the APC?
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt that the people of Ekiti will return APC to office. And this is quite significant, because by the time they do that, by God's grace, I will be the first governor to have served a full 2-term period in office, and the first governor whose party has managed to get a successor in place. So these are significant moments of history. No. But that's not to say that I'm taking this line low. For me, the election is not so much about my successor in the party now, the candidate of our party. It's a referendum on myself.
Absolutely.
So it is my election.
Ekiti has a history of giving out 4 years to each governor, and then
That's what I just
That's
said.
what you just said. But then I brought that up because former Governor Segun Oni is now in the mix. He's now joined the SDP. And many analysts believe that he's the most popular of the three candidates from the three big parties in Ekiti, right? The PDP, the APC, and the SDP. Does that bother you as well?
Analysts analyze. Voters vote. Leave this to the voters. At the end of the day, we will know.
but then there are these dissenting voices within the APC, considering how your successor, your hopeful successor emerged, Biodun Yebanji. Have you quieted those voices? Have you sorted out the issues within the APC ahead of the election?
Terry, it is in the nature of competitions for losers to feel aggrieved. And that happened even in APC. But who are the people that were most vociferous about that? I think you should ask them. You should take time off, speak to Senator Fayemi Bamidele, who ran for that same ticket. Take time off to speak to Right Honorable Femi Bamishile, and a number of them who felt that the ticket should have gone to them. They would tell you that, yes, naturally they felt dissatisfied, but ultimately they're back to their party to do the job of work to ensure that this party takes the cake on June 18.
I like to believe that that's the case, because in pointing fingers at you, your accusers are beginning to draw attention to, I believe, the just before the 2018 election that brought you to office, where they said that you hijacked the delegates and locked them up in a hotel in Ondo State, and no other aspirant could access them using your federal might as minister at the time. Does that also give you concerns?
Absolutely, total. You know, people would always come up with all sorts of reasons why they're not successful, instead of doing a detached, objective analysis of their situation. They blame it on others. If I was better prepared and better organized to have won the primary, should anyone even run against me in a normal setting for the 2018 ticket? Don't forget, at the time you're talking about, yes, I was minister, but I was also the leader of the party. Don't forget, at the time you're talking about, yes, I was minister, but I was also the leader of the party, because the party had no governor and I was the last governor in the state. It should have been a shoo-in for me, but I wasn't even bothered about that. I still put myself forward for that election, and party members decided by a wide margin.
Not because the delegates were nowhere to be found.
It's the antecedents. I never left the delegates. I never left the party, even when I was minister. Looking after the delegates, I was looking after my party members. So if they chose to reward that, people should not blame me for diligence and for compassionate treatment of members of the party.
Your Excellency, our time's almost up. Elections are just around the corner. One, let's begin with your presidential party's primaries. Let me find out from you what your concerns are, or what your expectations are ahead of that election.
My expectations? Oh, well, I'm still going around. I still have a few states to cover before the D-Day primaries in, I think, 29th or 30th of May. And I believe all of us who are contesting should be given the level playing field to approach those who are going to vote in the election. We don't know the mode yet, just as you highlighted earlier. We hope that will become clearer sooner rather than later. But ultimately, as long as the process is fair and everybody can see that this is a fair process, just like the one I conducted in December 2014, which produced candidate Muhammadu Buhari, for me, it's not a do or die affair. I would like to be the choice of my party, and I would like to think I would put in a lot to give voters the confidence that I am the best person for the job. But that decision is really up to them.
And as we prepare for the 2023 general elections, there are those who fear. Most of my guests have raised concerns about the security situation just ahead of that election. Do you have concerns as well?
Security situation almost always become a source of concern in the wake of elections. And that's why INEC, I believe, has an interagency committee on security that advises it and also work on all of the issues that are of concern. I think all of us should exhibit restraint, treat these as something that is not a do or die affair, and do everything within our powers to protect the sanctity of the process. However, I think the new electoral law has also put in place some things that should act as a deterrent for those who want to step out of the legal process in order to undermine the electoral process. I believe there is now an independent electoral offences commission that would be in position to put in place maximum sanctions against those who don't want to play by the rule book. But I also know President Muhammadu Buhari fairly well, that he is a stickler for fairness, for equity, and for non-interference of the executive in the electoral process. He will not condone it, he will not promote it, he will not even act in favor of people who are in his own party. Anyone who knows him knows that he is the best person to have at this point in time because it's fair to all.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for coming to speak with us on Political Paradigm, and I wish you well with your presidential ambition.
Thank you, Terry, for having me on your program. And yes, it's late in the day. I've just returned from campaign visits, but that's what the job requires.
And politicians are known for keeping late nights. I should be the one worried about staying up this late. Thank you once again. Well, that's Political Paradigm. Thank you so much for your time. Remember, you can catch this episode and others on YouTube. Search Political Paradigm or go to channelstv.com. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.